If you're enjoying the podcast and would like to help me keep it going, I'd like to highlight just a few ways you can do that. And you can do all of these on my website, andyhedges.com. First is you could leave a donation. And thank you to those of you who have been donating to the podcast. Those donations are really the only way I have to cover the costs of producing these episodes. The next thing you could do is go to my store and buy a CD or buy a t-shirt. And finally, while you're there, you could sign up for my email newsletter. That's a way to stay up to date with where I'll be playing and new podcasts coming out and other news. So thanks for checking out the website, andyhedges.com, and thank you for supporting the podcast. I'd like to kick off today's show with a poem by the great Charles Badger Clark. This is one of his entitled Ridin'. There's some that like the city, grass that's curried smooth and green, theaters and strangling collars, wagons run by gasoline. But for me, it's horse and saddle, every day without a change, and the desert sun a-blazing on 100 miles of range. Just riding. Desert rippling in the sun, mountains blue along the skyline. I don't envy anyone when I'm riding. When my feet is in the stirrups and my horse is on the bust, and his hooves a flashing lightning from a cloud of golden dust, and the bawling of the cattle is coming down the wind, then a finer life than riding would be mighty hard to find. Just a riding, splitting long cracks through the air, stirring up a baby cyclone, ripping up the prickly pear as I'm riding. I don't need no art exhibits when the sunset does her best, painting everlasting glory on the mountains to the west, and your Opry looks foolish when the night bird starts his tune and the desert's silver mounted by the touches of the moon. Just a riding. Who can envy kings and czars when the coyotes down the valley are singing to the stars, if he's riding? When my earthly trail is ended and my final bacon curled and the last great roundup's finished at the home ranch of the world, I don't want no harps nor halos, robes nor other dressed up things. Let me ride the starry ranges on a pinto horse with wings. Just a riding. Nothing I'd like half so well as a rounding up the sinners that a wandered out of hell. And a riding. Howdy folks, this is Andy Hedges, and you're listening to Cowboy Crossroads. On each episode, I interview a different guest and ask them to share stories and discuss music, poetry, and culture from the working cowboy west and beyond. My guest today is Mike Beck. If you haven't already, I'd recommend going back and listening to the first part of my interview with Mike on the last episode. On this second part of my interview with Mike, I asked Mike to talk about the ranching and cowboy history in California where he grew up. Here's Mike Beck. Was that something you were aware of growing up? Like the kind of the deep ranching cowboy history in this area?
No, it was just
talk about,
no. I mean, I knew there was ranches around and there was ranch country and stuff, but no, I didn't even think about it much. Where we rode our horses, like I say, from the house, we rode across this ranch called the Work Ranch, and but no, I didn't. There's a guy there that ran. He says, "Don't you kids rope my cattle?" No, and it wasn't until I got older and started kind of seeing and understanding kind of the history of California. I'm one of these guys that's not all about this whole vaquero thing. That's not my thing, I mean, I understand, I think because I'm a realist about it. I really am. Because I think that the work that's done with a horse is universal. I mean, good work, good horsemen. You're getting the same things in place with a horse that you need, whether you're jumping them over a hedge in that, running down a fox in England, or whether you need to get him up to rope something. And I think there's a universal thing with some of these guys that were good hands, especially the older ones, that wrote these books, some of these books I've read. So I think a lot of the whole vaquero thing, I asked Bill about it, they have nothing to do with it. And the vaquero thing it isn't, I think it's totally overblown myself. And I just think that, it's beautiful. It's a great romantic history. It really is. When Spain had this country, and this was just Spanish land grants, and there was no fences, and they were, the Catholic Church was building these missions all up a day's ride between each other, and they were saying, so we could save these Indian souls. Shit, it was about making money is what it was about. The Catholic Church is great at it, and I know because I was raised a Catholic. And so they had their own brand and their own kind of thing, and they had all these cattle here, I mean, this was paradise. And so now they enslaved these Indians and made them build these missions. So now they need somebody to work the cattle. So because Mexico's, and Spain's so connected, they could send back to Spain and get these vaqueros to come over. These guys had been cowboying for a few hundred years, from what I understand, and roping, and they had some shit figured out. So they helped these Indians and stuff learn how to work these cattle. It was out of necessity, And they brought with them some traditions that are also look back all warm and fuzzy, but some of it was just plain ass brutal on a horse. They're pretty cruel, And so I don't know about it, but I love the history. I love the romance of, God, California must have been so cool. And the hide and tallow trade. And, here we are right close to this kind of coastline that comes up in my mind when I write these songs about, and seeing these Joe Mora. Joe Mora lived here in Monterey, and reading his books probably were the first time I got introduced to understanding it. There was people I knew. You get out on these ranches, people that I knew that were like, that had names, last names of a lot of Swiss Italians around here and stuff, and they had they were ranchers and stuff. So I knew that there was this connection back to old Europe but not so much to Mexico. It wasn't until I read later, and it's actually Spain, where that whole thing came down. But I think it's kind of a way that people market stuff now, and good. It's good. Because let me tell you, Bill Dorrance and Joe Walter, and a really good hand, a great guy, a good roper, and Billy Aska, great roper, all friends of mine and stuff. I was around when they started this roping, kind of a roping school, ranch roping school. I'm sure there was guys teaching people how to team rope. There was. But there was nobody doing this about how to handle these cattle. And so Joe, I was running a horse place in Montana, and I had Brian Newbert and Joe come up and do a clinic. And then at my place, and that was like the first time they had ever done a clinic, I think, maybe. This place I ran up in Montana. And so then we got together with some other people, and Joe was going to do some roping schools, like a real roping weekend. And I remember this clear as a bell because I'd already been up in Montana. And Montana was very influenced by Texas because they came up the trail, all the way up there. From what this is my short understanding of it, but I think it's right. So they had swell fork saddle, and they tied off. In Colorado, they tied off, They didn't dally rope. So very Texas influence with that kind of rigging and stuff, And it makes sense because they came up from Texas on is it the Goodnight Lovin' Trail all the way there or whatever, You're from Texas, you tell me, man. You know Andy Wilkerson. I don't know the whole dang story, but, so I was in Montana. What I'm getting at is those guys had 2 shots roping. 2 shots. Everywhere I went, I don't give a shit. There was 2 shots. There was a heel shot and there was a head shot. And they were both like team roping shots. So when Joe came up there, I remember there, and it was cool. These 2 cowboys came from, they were out in Jordan, out that area in Montana. Man, I mean, that's big-ass country. And they were on this same ranch at 2 different camps with their families. And they only saw each other like twice a year. This place was so huge. And they roped all day long, these guys. And so we were showing them some shots. These different kind of shots. It's a different kind of rope. It's a poly rope. And the way I'm telling this story is because now okay, so they didn't know anything but these 2 shots. And I said, well, this is how you throw this. And they were like, what? Oh, and next thing you know, these guys are just eating it up. And they're seeing a use for this. Hip shot, it lays up on the hip and keeps the loop open under it, throws the tip underneath the calf's flanks or cow, and just these kind of shots. So these shots came from Bill Dorrance. Now, I know the vaqueros threw these shots because I've looked in these Joe Moore books, and I totally trust him, I mean, he told some great stories, but it's all based on truth, And he drew these pictures of these big riata shots these guys made with these long riatas and stuff. And the poly rope is a beautiful replacement, for the riata. Bill said, if you're going to rope with a riata, you need 3. One you're using, one that's broke, and one you're fixing, And it's true. They can be fragile, So anyway, when these guys up in Montana started learning these shots, and it started spreading more, through and guys in Nevada had already been throwing some of these kind of things, but that was kind of what brought it out there. And so, if Bill could see today, it's pretty cool. You can go to, Montana's got these ranch rodeos now, ranch ropings, branding event. They didn't have those when I was up there. And when I came up with a weight tree saddle and I day work on the weekends, I was going to shoeing school. And I had a weight tree saddle. They made fun of me. They'd never seen one. The only place was the Flying D, where Tom went in the 60s and hung out. And he brought those Dale Harwood saddles with him. Tom designed the Wade tree and brought it to Hamley's. They wanted to call it the Dorrance tree, but he said, nah, let's call it the Wade tree. Because there was a guy that influenced him, Clifford Wade, But Tom designed that tree, and it's a slick fork with a, like 4-inch horn cap, and really fits a horse nice, especially the kind of horses that everybody was cowboying on out there. It's kind of half thoroughbred, half quarter horse. So, I remember I was doing a horse demo, and so the horsemanship, and what I saw from Bill, there's a guy that wrote a book, and I think it's one of the few books I recommend. I think it's called The Complete Training of a Horse and Rider. You can get it almost anywhere. It's a Penguin book, paperback. That's a good book. And it's written by this guy, I can't even pronounce his name, but I'll try. It's Alojis Pajoski. And I've read that book and underlined it, and I think Tom loaned me his, and I underlined all places he underlined and where he wrote. And that's more of a Dorrance thing. That they were on to stuff that these guys on the other side of the world that were good horsemen were onto too, using a different terminology, but onto this thing. And so that really influenced me. Like I say, the upside about this fascination with the vaquero thing, and people are holding clinics called the vaquero tradition and all this, great. Guys now there's more saddle makers. I mean, I remember there was a time there in the early 70s where it just looked like it was going to die out. No braiders, hardly any silver engravers. I mean, it's hard to imagine, huh? From you go to Elko and you see people, they got beautiful, you see guys walking around with 3 or 4 riatas on their arms in a bar trying to sell them. That's so cool. But there was a time when nobody was doing it. And Bill was in fear that the whole thing was going to die out because he was quite a braider. But there wasn't that many guys making saddles, young guys or anything. And now it's cool. There's guys making saddles, and guys making hats, and guys making spurs, and guys making bits, and Guy's braiding, and I think it's a beautiful celebration of the culture, you know. But I remember I was doing working out in Monticello, Utah, and I was doing a horse demo. This guy brought me out there. He liked what I did. And so I'm at the fair, I'm starting a horse, you know, as a demo. And so when I got done, you know, I was tired, and they're taking me to a cafe to eat. And several people wanted to talk to me, you know, and this guy came along. I won't mention his name, but he's like a clinician. And like a lot of these clinicians, he's got 3 or 4 people kind of traveling with him that adore him, you know. And so we go to lunch, and I'm tired. Oh, I got this tuna fish sandwich I'm eating. It just looks like heaven. I'm hungry. I'm tired. And I got a glass of iced tea with lemon in it that's never getting it. It's never getting down. She's just filling it up. And this guy's talking on and on about the Vaquero thing and the California thing and the California thing and the Vaquero thing and the California traditions and the California traditions, you know. And I'm just eating and eating. And I'm not saying anything. I don't care, you know. I don't care. He's talking. He's got these people hanging on every word. And finally he said, "Isn't that right, Mike?" Which, you know, you're going to ask me something, you're going to get this straight up. And I just said, you know, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I have no idea. And I could have gone like, oh, yeah, that's right, those good old traditions. But it's like, you know what, man? I'm kind of interested in Aloysius Pajowski and what he did with the horses, running the Spanish riding school. And he's got one other book called My Horses Are My Teachers that Bill loaned me and suggested I read it. And Henry Windmalen's book called Dressage. Those kind of things interest me. That's just me. I'm not saying these other guys are wrong. But if you're going to ask me, I'm going to say, like, I don't know. So, you know, and I've seen other people I know go, oh, we're going to have a California, you know, Vaqueros traditions, and they're not from California. People ask me, Mike, you're from California. I said, you know what, man? I kind of wasn't interested in that. I was interested in Buffalo Springfield, you know. And maybe somebody else was. But it really, my heroes, the people I want to emulate, you know, people that was Bill and Tom. Dorrance and Brian Newbert is a good hand too. He really influenced me. And Ray Hunt too. And I never heard those guys once talk about Vaqueros one time, never once. It's sort of like, you know, Bill said, you know, yeah, it's pretty human nature, referring to something else. It's pretty human nature for people to get all hepped up about something. One time, you know, and I saw some of my friends that were older riding into Bosal. And I, you know, Bill taught me to braid. I didn't want to learn how to braid, but I cut a lot of string and I braided because he wanted me to. I wanted to rather be playing the guitar any free time. But I said, okay, you know. And, but I remember I said, hey, Bill, I was thinking, man, I'd like to ride in the Bosal. That thing looks kind of cool, you know. Some of these people I admired were riding in the Bosal, you know, in the Hackamore. And I said, Bill, what is it about riding in the Bosal? He said, well, Mike, it's pretty much all the same. The end. The end, man. And I understand what that's about now. Because when you're operating a horse's body with your body, you know, you're getting him so together with you that now the reins are just framing him, just shaping him in this frame. And you know, that's why people come up to the Dorrance Ranch, you know, and they see the saddle room and they see those spade bits. If somebody's never seen one, they go, oh, that looks brutal. You know, that looks like it hurt his mouth. Well, I guarantee you, by the time Bill hung that in a horse's mouth, he wasn't having to pull. Everything else was together. And so Tom, he liked riding the snaffle bit, and me too. I like to ride in the snaffle bit. I don't even own a bridle. And I don't care if people want to build them and ride with them. Great. You know why I like a snaffle bit is because I'm used to a McCarty. Super handy to have a McCarty in your hands when you're working. A lot of things you can do with them. Getting on and off a horse and different things. If tying one up and tying his head down to the hobbles and stuff, and you don't have all this crap on there, it's going to break, and that's just me. But I love getting my horses soft and trying my best to get them soft and get them nice and get them responsive, that they learn how to speed up without tightening up and come down without tightening up and not, and just being confident and stuff. But that's not about what you hang in his mouth. It should be something in there that doesn't hurt him, and something that's balanced. But I think people make a big stink out of, people like to go real. They do the same shit with guitars, right? Oh, I got to have this certain kind of pedal, to make this sound, and I got to have this thing that works just like that, and oh my God, I say, what kind of pedal is that? What do you got? And I know a guy was telling me a story about how he built a guitar for Eddie Van Halen, and so he was supposed to deliver it to Eddie Van Halen's house. Eddie said, "Yeah, bring it over today." So he knocked on the door, and Eddie's wife answered and said, "Oh yeah, he's down in the the music room or whatever, the hall down there, the pool room or whatever." So he says he's walking down there with this guitar and he hears this classic Eddie Van Halen shit ripping, just tearing it up. And he said he came in, he's playing a Silvertone guitar and an old Silvertone amp, and there was that Eddie Van Halen sound that it's in your hands, man, or whatever. It's in your soul, in your heart, in your head. That's where all this stuff originates, and it comes through your body down here, just like the horse. Ray Hunt would say it goes from his mind to his body, through the legs to the feet. You're riding the feet. You're loading the feet in the trailer. You're asking the feet to cross the creek. You're asking the feet to wait. And so, but it originates in the mind. And when you're playing music, think about it, man. Everything that you feel that comes from your heart and your soul is coming through your body through this thing. This thing. So after a while, this thing starts to become something. Because everything that you feel is going through it. It's an expression of what's inside your inner soul and mind and heart. That's why when you get one stole from you, you feel so violated. Because it's like a part of you is gone. Part of you is missing. And it's because everything you've been thinking, and amps will do the same thing. If you play the same amp long enough, that thing starts growing. It comes just like wraps around you. Become part. Because think about everything that Jimi Hendrix played that went through his Marshall amp came from that figure's childhood. Every Freddie King record he heard and all that stuff. All his influence came right through him. Then became his take on it, and came through that amp and through that speaker and through those tubes. It becomes something. It becomes part of you, man. So people are going, I need a pedal. You ever listen to the original Chuck Berry's Maybelline? The original one. They play it on K-Pig radio all the time. I hear it. Oh, man, it's the first one. Chuck is looking at the clock going, yeah, okay, that's good. One take. His guitar is out of tune, Maybelline, and the amp is broken. And it sounds lovely, man. It is a rockin', swinging track. He's burning it down. And I'm thinking, I tell people, I say, listen to that, because they play it all. Listen to that. See how out of tune he is? I said, listen to the amp. It's like going, There's somebody making a pedal right now. Maybe in Germany. The Chuck Berry Maybelline pedal to sound just exactly like that thing that was broken. People get on these tracks. I think it's human nature to look. Same with the horse. They want their horse fixed. They want him a certain way. They want it right now. They want to, be able to, feed him something, rub some cream on him, just, put a bit in his mouth or a certain kind of halter to get these results. And when you got to go look in the mirror. That's where, and you got to change that person looking in the mirror. That's what you got to do. That's where your answer is. And that's about your plan. But it's tangible. It's something you can do. You can sit down and do it. You can sit down and play. And you can become something. Practice makes something. You know? And so the next thing you know, I mean, you're trying to learn what other people are doing, just like with the horse. You know, it's like you go, but I'd really like to do it just like Ray, or just like, well, that's Ray. He can really influence you. But and you can take all that stuff. It's money in the bank. It's great to be, Then it becomes how you would do it with the same kind of approach, but maybe something different. When I was young and played bluegrass, I wanted to sing like Ralph Stanley before Ralph Stanley was hip. He was certainly hip in our small little tiny bluegrass world, Ralph and Carter. But, then it became like, but man, it's like, and I was like, man, I'll never be able to sing like that. That was a hard pill to swallow. You had to find your own voice, or like, then it was like, oh gosh, man, I'd sure like to sing like Vince Gill. It's like, dude, you just, then you find what you can do. And then it becomes you, and it's beautiful. And then everything that's the roots of every influence, comes through you. Like when I work with a horse, I don't even, when people are telling me their shit about their horse, I'm just thinking, wow, what's for lunch? Really, I don't care. Because they're going, oh, he does this and he does that, and then he gets scared of a motorcycle, and then he goes, it's like, I'm thinking like, God, I hope that they have that roast beef sandwich again. That was good. That's what I'm thinking about. Because I'm going to look at him and take him in and let him kind of, show me where he's at. He's going to show you right away where he's at. And he's going to tell you everything. That tells you everything that's ever been done to him. But you don't learn that overnight, That takes a lot of getting your hands on a lot of them and thinking about it, and it's enjoy the trip, enjoy the whole trail. Tom said to Steve Dorrance, and I'm sure Steve wouldn't mind if I repeated this, but Tom was the youngest. He lived to be 93. Bill lived to be 93, and they were very sharp-minded guys. But when he was 93, he was up on the ranch, and he said to Steve, "Boy, Steve, I hope I die before they find out." And Steve said, "Find out what, Uncle Tom?" He said, "That I don't know nothing." That's the beauty of that approach. Of you're always trying to improve your thing. And it's so yeah, enjoy the path. And the stuff that is your weakness will become your strength. I was too sensitive, man. I did not like getting bucked off these horses. And I knew other guys were just like, come on, man, let me stick the steel to him. And, I'll ride the crap out of him. And I was like, that don't fit me. So I started finding out ways to keep them from being bothered. To getting more prepared to ride. More confident and stuff, And that fit me good. And then I found out that, hey, that was what people needed anyway. I remember Bill Dorrance on his deathbed told me, he said, "I sure hope you keep helping people, Mike." And I said, "Well, Bill, I'd like to. I don't know if I can, if anybody's going to be interested. It's so slow, what I do." And he said, "It's not slow." And I know now what these guys meant. What? It's not. It's just what he needs. But every horse that you get your hands on right now has got the product of every other horse behind you that ever you had a success or a failure on, that you made mistakes on or had some success. He has the benefit of that. It's like every song you sing in front of an audience has got every great gig you've done, every shit gig you've done, It's got those people are lucky. They get the benefit of that every time you step up there now. Right? It's like every you've got this this background of experience that, yeah.
That's great, man. You feel like playing one more song?
Sure. play that. Well, she was born on the south coast, neath a tall redwood tree, raised on a rancho, a bridle horse between her knees. She's the product of the passion between a woman and a man, a sweet senorita and a lord o'er the land. Wild and brave, how she would ride through the tall brush she'd go, with blood of the lords of Spain and the dons of Mexico. Well, tapaderos flapping in the wind, and the song of the Mexican round, with the swing of La Riata, she caught many a wild cow. Lots of men who rode gaily on down her lane, bragging how they're gonna court her, they're gonna change her last name. Yeah, they rode home at a slow walk. She changed not her life with the view from her saddle. She could be no man's wife. Yeah, but she secretly shared her love with a sailor from a cargo ship. They lay in the tall grass way up on Sabrinus Ridge. Yeah, they watched the whales swim the coast, and their hearts both beat as one. They pledged an ancient and undying love as o'er the sea set the sun. One day she went into town for supplies at the store. She overheard a cowboy tell a far and distant war. Yeah, the sinking of a cargo ship, her secret lover, he lost his life. She fled the store and fought back the tears, swore she'd be no man's wife. So if you want to, go and see her and stop by and say hello. Up along Narrow Barranca to the top you must go. Yeah, she lies there forever beneath a California oak tree, awaiting her lover from that ridge o'er the sea. Well, she was born on the south coast, neath beneath a tall redwood tree. She was raised on a rancho, and bridle horse between her knees. She's a product of the passion between a woman and a man, a sweet senorita and a lord over the land. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking the time to visit with me.
Oh, it's fun. And right down here in the redwood trees, close to the coast where we're recording it, is perfect setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Andy. I love the show. I love what you're doing. Keep it up, man. I listen when I'm on my bicycle or walking. I put a podcast on. It's just a gas, man.
All right, folks, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank Mike Beck for taking the time to visit with me. You can find out more about Mike at mikebeck.com. You can find out more about me and this show at andyhedges.com. Remember, you can listen to this show and subscribe for free on the iTunes store so that you'll never miss an episode. If you'd like to contact me with a question or a comment or a story, I'd love to hear from you. Send an email to andy@andyhedges.com. Thank you for listening to Cowboy Crossroads.